We're talking about blood today, and I'm going to be doing the notes a little bit differently. So what I need you to do is look at both the things that I write on the whiteboard as well as what I'm saying to you. And just bear with me because this is a mirror image, so it's a little bit difficult to do. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the components of blood. Now there's three main parts of blood, and blood is basically made of formed elements, which are your cells, floating in a plasma, which is basically just liquid with some proteins in there and some other stuff. And blood is made of 45% erythrocytes, which are your red blood cells, so it's written in red, and 1% leukocytes, which are your white blood cells, and then 54% plasma, which is, again, the liquid part with some proteins and other stuff in there. So the plasma part of your blood is going to be the liquid part of the blood. And again, that's about 55%. When you centrifuge or spin down the blood parts, you are going to get, the top part will be kind of yellowy liquid, and that's your plasma. It's 90% water with about over 100 substances dissolved into that plasma. This can include anything from salts to the most common, which is plasma proteins. And there's actually a good chart in your book of all different kinds of things that are dissolved in your plasma. But again, the most common are plasma proteins, which are made by the liver, and they can do lots of different jobs, including helping to clot your blood, as well as hormones that will transfer those messages that we've talked about from one body part to another. The next part is your erythrocytes. So that's just a fancy name for red blood cells. And basically what erythrocytes do is they carry oxygen to your cells in your body. And hopefully you're already pretty aware of that. So hemoglobin is the protein that is found in your red blood cells, and it has iron in it. So you do need iron in order to effectively get oxygen to all of your blood. There are 4 subunits to the hemoglobin protein. Each one has iron in it, and it's able to transport oxygen to the blood cells. There's 4 oxygen molecules on the hemoglobin, and 1 is attached to each part of the subunit. Now, the good thing about red blood cells is they don't have mitochondria. They make ATP anaerobically, so they're not using any of the oxygen that they're carrying. They're just bringing it, so that's why they're really good taxi cabs for that oxygen. Another reason why they're really good taxi cabs is because of this shape right here. So this is kind of my version of a red blood cell from the side. You can see that it's depressed in the middle, and that creates a large surface area to volume ratio. And the important reason for that is so that you have easy diffusion of the oxygen through the cell. So the next type of cell is called a leukocyte, and those are more commonly known as your white blood cells. So leukocytes are not oxygen carriers, and what they do is they are related to your body defenses. And there's 2 major types you can see on the top here. They are granulocytes and agranulocytes. So granulocytes have little granules in the cells, and agranulocytes do not. So that's basically the difference between the 2. So we're going to talk about granulocytes first. So neutrophils are one type of granulocyte, and they are the most common of all of the leukocytes, all the white blood cells. And what they do is they are active phagocytes. So what they'll do is kind of eat or ingest or take in those bad invaders that will try to make you sick. Eosinophils are another type of granulocyte. What they do is they kill worms. So anytime that a parasite's going to come in, either maybe you ate raw fish or didn't wash your hands really well after the bathroom or after you picked up some dog poop, you might get some worms. And so eosinophils kill those and other parasites. And they're also involved in allergic responses. So they're pretty active in that way as well. And then basophils are the most rare. And what basophils do is release histamine. And what histamine does is cause inflammation. So it makes all the other white blood cells come to the area where they're needed. And basophils also contain heparin, which is an anti-clotting chemical. You can actually take heparin as a drug if you need your blood to not clot. So each of these ends in "phil," which is an easy way to remember which ones are the granulocytes. The other kind are agranulocytes. They end in "cyte," which is another easy way to remember that. So the lymphocytes we talked about that with thymosin, which makes it's part of the immune system. So thymosin makes the T cells differentiate. So there's two types of lymphocytes, B and T. B creates the antibodies. So it'll create proteins that go and attack invaders, whereas T cells do a direct cell attack. So they actually go to the invader and kill it. And then lastly is monocytes, which are involved in long-term cleanup, like chronic infections, like tuberculosis. There's a lot of them during those times. And they are macrophages, so they will ingest very large invaders, and they're actually the biggest of all of the white blood cells. And then I kind of erased this in my hand, but it says NLMEB, which are the first initial of all of the blood cells, and you can remember that by saying, "Never let monkeys eat bananas." So that's your white blood cells. And then finally, we're going to talk about two processes. The first one is hematopoiesis. So hematopoiesis is the creation of blood cells, white blood cells and red blood cells and platelets, actually. This occurs in your red bone marrow, which is found in your flat bone, so your skull and ribs, and it's also found in the epiphyses of the proximal epiphyses of your femur and your humerus. Basically, we start with a stem cell called hematocytoblast, and it creates all different types of cells, both red and white, as well as platelets. Red blood cell creation is interesting because the cells are created and then they have all their parts, but then they eject the nucleus and they eject all their organelles so that they're just basically vessels of the hemoglobin protein. But this is controlled by a hormone called erythropoietin, which is produced by the kidneys, which makes sense because your kidneys do filter your blood. And it's based on the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood rather than how many blood cells there are. And then white blood cells and platelets are controlled by other hormones. And then finally, you have hemostasis. Hemostasis literally means stopping bleeding. And there's 3 steps. So when you get a cut, the first thing that happens is your vascular spasms occur. So basically your blood vessels are going to constrict to try to decrease the amount of blood flow to that area. Then a platelet plug is going to form. So because the sides of the vessel have been exposed, the platelets is basically sticky to platelets. So platelets are going to join up all there. And then at the same time, coagulation events or clotting events are going to occur. And so protein called thrombin and fibrinogen will create fibrin, which is long and stringy, and basically pulls in those red blood cells to create a clot. This all happens in about 3 to 6 minutes, and it's actually been found that gauze as well as pressure speed up the process, which is why you're told to put those onto a cup. So those aren't all your notes, but that's where we're going to stop for today. We'll talk about blood typing next class. And I hope you got all the notes down. If you didn't, you can rewind. And please bring any questions to class next time. Thanks, guys.